Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CSTA's webinar series. The title of today's webinar presentation is Golf Canada Event Showcase Webinar. Canada has had a love affair with the game of golf longer than a Mo Norman drive. Golf Canada continues to do tremendous work at developing its championship events and creating opportunities for new stars like Brooke Henderson to represent Canada and flourish internationally with the world's best and brightest. How can you bring these events to your area? What is the bid process? What opportunities are on the horizon? That's exactly what we're here to discuss today. For me, I'm Steve Trainer, and I'm working on behalf of the Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance. I'll be overseeing technology, taking your questions, and supporting the presenters today. Our speakers today are Brian Crawford and Adam Helmer from Golf Canada. And before we give their full intros, let's go through a few technology items. So now that you're on board here, you see that you've got a dashboard at the top right of your screen. I just want to make sure that everyone is using the audio feature properly. So if you've dialed in on your phone, please ensure that you have entered the audio PIN number. Note that all attendees are muted due to the number of people on the line and to reduce distractions for all. So if you try to speak up right now to get my attention, I won't be able to hear you. But if you are using a microphone and speakers on your computer as an audio and you experience any trouble with audio during the webinar, it can most likely be resolved by switching to the telephone audio option. So can you please press the raise your hand button to show me that your audio is working properly and you can hear me? Okay, awesome. We have everyone putting their hand up. That's fantastic. And in terms of questions, now we really want to hear from you guys regarding the questions. Usually have a lively chat box, so you can type your questions into the box near the bottom of the dashboard, and I will let the presenters know we have a question when there is an appropriate time to pause. If you have a technology-related question or issue, please do bring these forward so I can try to address them right away and ensure you get the full experience of the webinar. In terms of following along, you'll be able to follow on your screen, but I will be providing each attendee a PDF version of the presentation, in addition to providing a recording of the webinar afterwards. But before I turn it over to Golf Canada, I want to do one thing. We actually want to find out exactly the experience level our registrants and participants have with working with Golf Canada. So I've got a couple of poll questions that I want to ask. So the first question I want to ask is, have you hosted a Golf Canada event or championship in the past in your area? So I'm going to launch that right now. So you guys can select yes, you have, no, or you're unsure. And I'll be just summarizing these responses for our speakers who may or may not be able to see it. So we have 43% of participants say that they have hosted a Golf Canada event or championship in the past. 14% have said no, and we've got some newcomers on this within their respective roles. We've got about 38% saying that they are unsure. So thanks to everyone that took part in that one. We also want to open up one more before we go. Is importantly, it's sometimes with these events, it's really important to have great partners and relations. So we want to know, have you worked with a provincial golf association or national golf body previously? So right now we have about 70% of the participants have voted already. 57% said yes, they've worked with the provincial golf association or national golf body of some sort previously. 43% have said no. So thanks very much for participating. Love to use that technology. And I am going to get this started by handing it over to Brian and Adam, who will kick things off. Guys?
Great, thanks, Stephen. On behalf of Golf Canada, thanks for having us to you and the CSTA, and thanks for all the destinations. And I know there's some other sport organizations on the line as well. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about kind of Golf Canada in general, golf in Canada, give you an overview of some of our events that we host annually. Just quickly, our title screen. A big initiative has been a focus on youth and kids, from playground to podium. Golf for life is definitely a big trend right now and a big focus for us as a sport. We'll give you an overview of some of the current bids that are open currently to all the destinations and member clubs of Golf Canada, and just give you a quick overview of our events. And we wanted to kick it off just with a quick intro video just about Golf Canada in general. So enjoy.
The Canadian Pacific Women's Open is underway. What a round it's been already. He is the star of Canada, but especially in this event.
I should have mentioned off the top, it'll just be Brian and myself. We had some tough times figuring out a date and a time for this. You would think that the off season would be easy in November and December. We had to push back on Stephen until January, and unfortunately Ryan's down with the flu, so it wasn't meant to be for Ryan. But Brian will be pinch hitting for Ryan, who is the tournament director of the CP Women's Open. Like I mentioned, we just wanted to give you kind of a quick overview. There's a lot of great things happening at Golf Canada under the new leadership of Mr. Lawrence Applebaum. Tons of great programs and initiatives, which I'll speak to. But just in terms of golf in Canada, we wanted to paint a picture and give you some stats, some pretty staggering statistics from a golf perspective. And hopefully a lot of you on the line are golfers. But the one thing we don't have a shortage of is facilities. We're the second country that has the most facilities, the second most facilities in the world, with 2,298 facilities. So it could be anything from a driving range to a 9-hole facility. The 7% of the world supply is in Canada. So the good thing about some of these partnership opportunities is that there's lots of golf courses around you. Golf is very accessible. There's stereotypes that, Golf Canada in our membership is a lot of the private clubs, but actual fact, 90% of our golf supply is actually public. And golf as a sport and as a generator of charitable initiatives, a $14.3 billion economic impact to golf in Canada, which is very staggering. $5 billion in direct revenues generated by Canadian golf facilities, more revenue generated by all other participated sports and recreational facilities combined. It just reinforces the massive financial, charitable, and environmental impact that golf really has in our communities across Canada. And you'll hear that throughout our presentation, that anything we do with our events, we're going to use them as a vehicle, as a platform to really make an impact in the community, to grow the game, get youth initiatives attached to our events, and working with destinations and other sport organizations as well. The charitable giving, 37,000 events roughly across Canada, raising more than $533 million for charity. And the numbers from our membership, there's been a lot of research studies. 2015 and 2017, there were comprehensive analysis done about how many golfers we actually have. So you've probably heard the 5.7 million number of Canadians who actually golf. The other number that we look at is 1.7 million in Canada actually play 10 rounds or more. And then in terms of our membership base, we have almost 315,000 members that are engaged, connected to Golf Canada as a whole, that we're always communicating with and engaging at various events and initiatives across Canada. So we just wanted to paint a little bit of a picture, and specifically to Golf Canada, I could say anything that we do, we're in the midst of getting ready for our annual meeting, which is at the end of February. Part of that will be launching a strategic plan in partnership with our provincial associations. For those that know the landscape of golf, there are a number of golf associations, upwards of 70 to 80 golf associations. You might be familiar with our NAGA partners, the National Alliance of Golf Associations, with the Golf Course Superintendents Association, PGA of Canada, the Canadian Club and General Managers of Canada, the National Golf Course Owners Association of Canada as well. And really, Golf Canada wants to be the leader with those associations by delivering programs and initiatives across the country that speak to growing the game, again, back to our youth, getting that pool of 5.7 million golfers, getting them engaged in golf and golf for life. We are the governing body of rules of golf. Handicap and course rating is at the forefront with the World Handicap System coming in 2020. We run the Hall of Fame Museum and all the archives, and from a heritage standpoint, the history of golf in Canada. Another one of our pillars is community with our membership, our media and communications team, and all their work and efforts that they do with our provincial associations to drive home that Canadian content that's happening at both the professional and the amateur level. Our resources have kind of been beefed up in the high performance area with our national team program. We now have our robust junior program. We have a young professional squad that, as they get through the amateur ranks and into the professional ranks, we still want to give them that support and coaching and make sure that they are ready for the next level. So we'll talk a bit about the success at the professional level in a minute. And then our charitable arm with our Golf Canada Foundation, and we run Golf for the Cure events, raising money for the Canadian Breast Society and Quebec Cancer Society as well. So really, for us and moving forward, we want to focus on our championships. Our two opens have the biggest spotlight, the biggest reach. These are the best chance for us to get out there and push Canadian golf and inspire the next champions, the next Mike Weirs. I think we can all agree that 2003, when Mike Weir won the Masters, was a huge moment and created the next wave of Canadian golfers for all of us. And then I'm going to speak to our Canadian championships and some of the junior initiatives and qualifiers that we have. So just in terms of heroes, I think we can all appreciate that, our Mike Weir moment, what's that next one going to be? And for those that follow golf, a gentleman that's gone through our national program, I saw him a lot growing up, was Corey Connors. He was in the final group of our Canadian Men's Am 4 years in a row, a finalist at the US Amateur, semi-finalist at the US Am the next year. He's had 2 top 10 finishes. He finished 3rd in Hawaii, and we had 8 Canadians in the field at the Sony Open in Hawaii recently. So it just speaks volumes to the work and effort that we're putting into our heroes of tomorrow, and just so important to drive this and have Canadians in our Open championships moving forward. And we'll get to on the female side next. And we wanted to do, since it's very topical, we wanted to do our 10-year comparison. A young Brooke Henderson, I think at the age of 10 there, and now is a 20-year-old. So just the leaps and bounds that she's gone through in 10 years is just phenomenal, and just a great touch point. We also wanted to show a lot of these players, if they win an elite championship, a Canadian championship, they have an affinity for these communities. Brooke growing up in Ottawa, Smith Falls just outside of Ottawa. These are the touch points, and we have the relationship with these players to kind of go back to the community and make more of an impact. So we just wanted to highlight that heroes are an important part, and generating the next best players in Canada to instill the next generation is important to us. So we got to give them the right platform and the right courses from a golf perspective to get them to the next level. So I will turn it over to Brian. He's going to give you a little insight about our 2 Open championships.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the webinar, and happy to connect with you to talk to you about, I'll talk about both the RBC Canadian Open and the CP Women's Open. My job here at Golf Canada is as the tournament director of the men's tournament. So I spend the entire year working on this one event, but it is certainly a large one. And so I'll cover off a little bit of detail about the event itself and kind of its history, where it's come from, a little bit of our kind of at a glance type of statistics and numbers around the event, but then focus a little bit about the partnerships that we've formed specifically on the community level and the city level to deliver this event, and something to consider for many of you when it comes to other potential NSF partnerships and so forth. So the history of the Canadian Open. Well, we're 110 years playing the Canadian Open, first contested in 1904, obviously with the Warrior breaks included in that as well. We're the third oldest continually running tournament on the tour after the Open Championship and the US Open. RBC has been the title sponsor since 2007 and is on board for quite a number of years more. It's traditionally hosted in the GTA. Glen Abbey and Oakville has hosted the most Opens at 30. We've also gone to Vancouver and Montreal as well in recent years, but traditionally is a GTA-based event, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. In Hamilton, this is actually the 100th anniversary of the very first playing at the Hamilton Golf and Country Club. We've had 6 Opens there in total, quite a few early on, and then quite a gap from 1930 till 2003, but have been back quite a bit since 2003, 6, 12, and now 19, and we'll also be going back there in 2023. A quick video on 2018. With apparently
That's it for us at the RBC Canadian Open. We hope you had a great time, and please make sure to join us next year in Hamilton.
So the 2018 was a tremendous event for us and quite a success, and I'll touch on a couple of the results from that as we move forward. But going forward into 2019, it is really a moment of renewal for us as an event. That we've got a brand new date at the beginning of June. We've traditionally in the last decade been in mid-July, and previous to that had been in September. And this new date at the beginning of June is really a premier spot in the PGA Tour calendar. And it has really created an opportunity for us to have a new narrative about the event. We'll have a incredibly enhanced field in terms of the players that will be playing. We traditionally or previously had followed the British Open, and that was challenging given that players had to come back from Europe and so forth. So a much better spot. We're before the US Open, which is a great lead-in. A lot of players like to play their way into major championships. You know, we avoid kind of the meat of cottage season and summer vacations. It's really the start of the festival season in Canada. School is still in session, so there's just so much that we can do with all of those sorts of things. And we are doing all of them and relaunching basically the RBC Canadian Open as a completely new event, even though it's 110 years old. So a little bit about quick facts about the event. Last year we had 75,000 plus attendees. We're looking to be much closer to about 90,000 attendees this year as we look to go over 100,000 attendees in the coming years. We are very heavily skewed Boomer Gen X, and of course are working on improving our attraction of millennials and families as well. Distance traveled. People do travel from quite a distance. It's not really a local event fan base. These numbers are based on last year at Glen Abbey, and certainly will actually be a bit different when we're in Hamilton. But certainly the number that have traveled, over 100 kilometers or over 80 kilometers to come in to the event from throughout the province of Ontario and across the country, and also from the United States as well. The vast majority of the people that attend the Canadian Open have attended it more than once, or over half of them have attended 3 or more times. So we certainly have a very, very loyal fan base that comes back year in and year out, and we continue to work hard to introduce the tournament to new fans that will become repeat customers as well. The demographic of the people that attend the Canadian Open, nearly 70% or over 70% that are university or postgraduate educated, so a highly educated group that are attending. Household incomes, over 18% of the people that are attending the Canadian Open have over $200,000 of household income, with only 27% that would be less than 100. Viewership, the Canadian Open goes out to 1 billion households worldwide. That's obviously an incredibly large number, and we've reaped some of the benefits of it for sure. This past year, we had the highest ratings in 7 years for our Saturday. We were tied for the highest ratings on Sunday. We were the top-rated program on broadcast television in the United States on CBS that Sunday as well. 26 total hours are broadcast on CBS Sports, Global, the Golf Channel, TSN, and so forth. So a huge audience that consumes the PGA Tour and certainly the Canadian Open as well. And with the new date, it will only be that much more interest and attention. Social media is, continuing to explode. Traditionally and historically, cell phones and social media and those sorts of things were not necessarily something that was early adopted by golf as a sport, and that certainly changed dramatically, and a very progressive approach by the PGA Tour to really make it part of the experience. And Golf Canada and our team here does a really fantastic job. It is certainly rated amongst the top of all the tour events when it comes to engagement and activity on social media. We have over 1,500 volunteers that participate, 56 chairs and vice chairs of 24 committees, obviously the lifeline to our event, but a huge piece of which, well over 2/3 come back every single year. We have people that have been 20 or 30 years volunteering for the Canadian Open. It's quite incredible. Just at a high level, the week at a glance, really, it's a week-long event. While the major part of the tournament is Thursday through Sunday, with the first 2 rounds Thursday, Friday, and then the final 2 rounds Saturday, Sunday. It's really a week-long event. Monday and Wednesday we have pro-ams and practice rounds. Tuesday we have a big Hall of Fame day, partner activations and activities throughout, and we're adding some exciting new elements to the event this coming year in music and food as well. So a few of the details, some things that we've done recently. Mentioned the Hall of Fame. The rink is something that we've been doing for the past 2 years and has quickly become an institution for our event. Essentially, we put hockey boards around a par 3 hole, and it has become the fan favorite, no doubt about it, and was just awarded this past fall as the best element on tour. So of all the PGA Tour events, and they do some spectacular things, the rink here at the RBC Canadian Open was recognized as the best, and people certainly love it, hanging over the boards, banging on the boards, and we're taking it to a whole new level in 2019 for those that have had a chance to see it. Celebrity appearances and all sorts of things that happen as part of the Open. But this coming year, we're working on building out a concert series. We've added a really exciting food initiative, bringing local restaurants on site, building out a space that they're actually going to serve menu items out of, called the Fairway, which we're pretty excited about. A brand new family zone, a trolley people mover to move people around the course, and a really integrated youth initiative and school day. To name a few of the primary ones. So a little bit just on the quick facts. As I mentioned, the event's enormous. The economic impact is well over $41 million, with over $30 million just in Ontario alone. So it's a huge animal and a big engine, and provides a lot of benefit to the communities that it's hosted in. So I mentioned previously the community partnership. What's unique here, and I have some previous experience with really great community partnerships in my previous role prior to joining Golf Canada, but we've formed a partnership with the City of Hamilton that's a multi-year partnership from 2018 to 2023 that includes 2 RBC Canadian Opens, 2019 and 2023, a number of Golf Canada Amateur Championships and other events like qualifying events and those sorts of things that will come to courses in the Hamilton area. Other golf programming that we're initiating, like Golf in Schools, is a big program that we run through our domestic development department, but we'll aim to put the Golf in Schools program into every one of the 120 schools in the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board over the next 5 years. Support towards the civic programs that the City of Hamilton runs and offers through their civic golf courses. Part part of this is obviously financial support to Golf Canada from the city and supporting the RBC Canadian Open as really one of the largest partners of the RBC Canadian Open in the years that we're hosting it here. It's a Tourism Hamilton driven initiative that is supported by City Council and certainly the Mayor's office as well. And part of that also includes operational support. We have an operational committee with the city that meets every single month and has over 15 different departments represented, from fire and police services to waste management, traffic and parking, and so forth. And really is just a fantastic partnership that makes delivering the event just so much easier and allows us to really also set our goals so much higher because of the support that we're given. So, why does the community want to form a partnership like that with ourselves? Well, obviously the quality of the event. It's a national, international event. We have a reputation, and obviously we've had past experience with the city. The economic impact, I talked about the dollars, that's tens of thousands of hotel room nights over the course of each Open and all of the other events as well. Business for the restaurants. I mentioned the Fairway Initiative, which we're taking local restaurants, Hamilton restaurants, bringing them on site, building them out there, driving people back to the restaurants for repeat visits in future. Using suppliers and contractors from the area is another big piece. It aligns with some of their strategies that the city has outside of food, but in music and culture and those sorts of pieces that we're bringing into these Spectator Village activations. Exposure to a national and international audience, as I've mentioned previously. So the B-roll images of the course, every time people say the Hamilton Golf and Country Club. I was in Philadelphia at an event earlier this year in September and met up with some Americans that have down there. They travel around to a number of tour events every year, and they'd seen that I was wearing Canadian Open attire and said, we're planning to come up this year. We saw the golf course on television in 2012. And it's just beautiful. We can't wait to come up there. And that's the real impact of what this is, and really changing people's visions for the city of Hamilton of what the city of Hamilton actually is, away from what maybe people traditionally think about it. And then finally, it's the community and legacy programming. So the youth initiatives, as we've mentioned, the civic programs and those sorts of pieces. So unlike the amateur championships that we'll talk about later, and to a lesser extent the women's event, the way that we go out and select sites, there's a lot of stakeholders involved, certainly the title sponsor and the PGA Tour and so forth, the golf courses and clubs themselves. And we don't have a RFP process for this event. We work directly with the clubs in the communities to host the event and to bring the event to those specific courses. So a little bit different, but wanted to kind of provide everybody an idea about what the event is all about, and also about how the city of Hamilton, I think, has been very progressive in the way that they've gone after partnerships with different organizations and NSS such as ourselves, and why it's a benefit to them. Any questions specifically about the RBC Canadian Open?
Yes. The first question, I think you've answered some of the first questions that came in. By the way, thanks to all of you who've already submitted questions. The first question that you've already touched off is on TV viewership. You talked about the success that you guys have had, and you said with the new date, the question was, with the new date, would there be any change to that? You said that there would already be probably a positive change as a result of the new date, but I guess with the RBC Open, because you guys don't have a formal RFP process, the question that came in was, do you have a list of possible courses or destinations that could host and meet the minimum requirements, or is it up to the destinations themselves to come to you to establish that relationship?
Yeah, no, we have a list. There are some very, very specific and also very demanding requirements of the course and facilities themselves to host an event. There's certainly lots of golf courses, as Adam mentioned earlier, across the country, but there's only so many that have kind of the size that present the challenge, that have the space to host, are of the quality that are kind of required, have the clubhouse and all those sorts of features that are part of the event, and also for us, have the community surrounding the course at the size and kind of scale that we need for it to be successful. So obviously the GTA, I mentioned Vancouver as a past host, Montreal, so very major cities that have a population base to support the event as well. So we certainly have that list and a lot of those relationships, and continue to have discussions with the various courses that we might look at, and also those cities that they're housed in.
Great. I'm going to let you continue now, but thanks to those that have submitted questions. Please keep your questions in, and I'll try to get them all in before the end.
So I've got a number of slides to cover on CP. Ryan Paul is our director of the CP Women's Open, which is our professional championship on the LPGA Tour. So it's the only LPGA Tour stop in Canada. It actually has the highest purse outside of the major championships and the tour championship itself. So it is certainly the premier event on tour outside of those couple major events. It attracts over 90 of the top 100 players in the year. So it is an event that is circled on the calendar every year for those players, and they attend. It's held in late August annually, and is an event that moves around, and we'll cover that in a second. So some of the benefits, and I won't kind of spend as much detail on kind of the demographics and those sorts of pieces. Many of them are very, very similar, maybe not quite the same number overall of attendees and that sort of thing, but in terms of the demographics and the fan base, it's very similar. So we, on average, and actually this would be similar with the Men's Open, and I didn't cover as well, but raise about $200,000 for local charities for the RBC Canadian Open. So this past year, the hospital in Regina, Saskatchewan, where the event was being hosted, was the primary beneficiary, as well as others. So there's over 1,500 hotel room nights that are booked for players and staff, corporate and officials. It's really a platform for showcasing the best golfers, female golfers in the world, to local residents and youth. So a little bit unlike the RBC Canadian Open, it is definitely a regional fan base that attends the event. Economic impact for the event is between $15 and $18 million. So this is, local vendors. Once again, as this event moves around, we change vendors based on the communities, transportation and meals and shopping and accommodations and entertainment and so forth. So in working with the community partners, once again, the way that this event is determined, and as I said, it moves west to east and around the country, is very much the title partner, the LPGA, ourselves, the clubs that are available, but working with the local municipalities are critical for this one as well, in terms of the cash funding support, VIK support, those sorts of pieces that can help us deliver this championship. Working with the charity in the market or within the province itself to support, a children's hospital as an example. And it is also very important that there's a strong corporate base and a desire to invest in hospitality. For both events, corporate hospitality is a big component of it. We build a small city on the golf course, and we build corporate hospitality structures throughout the course, and being able to have a base of clientele to purchase those is very important in finding host destinations for this event. So a look at past and future markets. So the list there on your left is our past markets: the York region, Regina, as I mentioned, this past year, Ottawa in 2017, Calgary, Vancouver area in 16 and 15, London, Edmonton, Montreal, Winnipeg, Halifax, and Niagara. So as you can see, it definitely moves around quite a bit over its course of time. Coming up in these future years, we'll be looking to host in Western Canada in 2020 and 2022, and then Eastern Canada in 2021 and 2023. And once again, there isn't an RFP process, so to speak, but this is really a case of where we go out and begin to work with clubs that are interested, and that's really when the local city can come in and be involved with the club in terms of those discussions to bring the event to that community. So any questions kind of specifically about the women's event that you have?
Oh, yeah, there's going to be some questions about that. So with regards to your plan of hosting in the West and the East in the coming years, has there been any sort of decisions made about hosts for those feature events for 2020 and beyond?
I'd say the only one that has been somewhat well developed is 2020, and that we would expect that will be finalized by the this winter. But beyond that, there isn't any there's been discussions with different clubs and communities that are interested in hosting in future years, but those years are still fairly wide open. As I said, there's a lot that comes into play on the women's event, and like I said, certainly the tour itself and the CP, the title partner, have a say in selecting and working with the partners that are there to choose from. So the other years, as to mention, are fairly wide open.
Okay, the next question comes from Tyler. Is there a chance to host the Women's Open in smaller markets that are able to meet the hosting requirements, or is it specifically something where your desire is to host it in sort of major cities?
Well, it's been in some major cities. I mean, this past year, as I mentioned, it was in Regina. So, a major city in the province of Saskatchewan, of course, not nearly as big as some of the other communities that have hosted it in the past. This coming year here in August, it is in the GTA at Magna in Aurora. So, is in a small community here in Ontario, but obviously is fairly close to the Greater Toronto area and that population base. I think really at the end of the day, the key is the ability to it's a 30,000-ish number of spectators that come through the gates. So being able to kind of support that level, being able to have corporate partners and different hospitality buyers that are willing to invest in those products. Like, those are the sorts of things that you need to look at. Where the suppliers are coming from. Is it a case of we need to bring all of our suppliers in, or are there local suppliers that we can work with that can provide the things that you need? Everything from tenting structures to washroom facilities and kind of everything else in between.
Right. Okay. I have one more question that came from Keith. I'm actually just clarifying with him to make sure I ask the question properly. So please continue, and I'll circle back on that important question.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hand it back over to Adam, who's going to get into our amateur championships and the detail about those.
Thank you. Switching gears onto the amateur side, I think we anticipated a few questions on the Women's Open. That's certainly the Brooke effect. Brooke's Brigade is very strong these days, and just to touch back on our heroes and the wave of professionals, we have 19 men and women on the professional ranks that are on the PGA, LPGA, or development tours. And the next wave is coming. Over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of success from our amateurs, Hugo Bernard, Jared Detroit, who was in the final group a couple of years ago, Naomi Ko, and just our Canadian Amateur Championships just proved to be that stepping stone for these players. That's the training ground for them to get to that next level, and to see the Mackenzie Hughes or the Brooks up close and personal. I think that's what, in talking to past clubs, past committees, past communities, to see these players up close and personal before they actually make it and turn professional and go on to further success is kind of the biggest takeaway, I would say. And being here for a couple of years, and that's the biggest thing for us, is just to see these players firsthand. And I'll try and touch on a few other areas that might entice you to maybe look differently, or to align with your objectives and initiatives of your destination and your city and municipality about what you want to do with your community. So I won't go in too much detail with each event, and happy to answer any questions at the end. But each year we run 34 competitions across Canada. So there's a ton of competitions happening coast to coast. Again, our relationship with our provincial partners. There's a lot of championships and competitions in the country. And what we've really looked at the last couple of years, it's kind of our strategy has kind of been flipped on its head, where our professional championships, our opens, used to go to the market and put out RFPs and have a bid process, and we've kind of gone that way with our amateur championships. We've raised the profile of our Canadian championships. They're world leading championships. They're not only Canadians, as much as we get domestic players Some of our men's and our women's championship are almost half international players. So there is a global reach to our championships. We've got 8 Canadian championships, ranging from our Canadian University College Championship, our 2 junior national championships, men's and women's amateur, which are our flagship events that I'll speak a bit more about later. And we've got our Canadian Senior Championships, as well as a men's Mid-Am Championship. The World Junior Girls Championship was started 5 years ago. It has been in Ontario and will be for the next couple of years, but long-term and sustainability for that event, it could go outside of the Ontario market in the future beyond 2022. We have junior regional championships, FutureLinks driven by Accurate championships, and then we host all of our regional qualifiers for the RBC Canadian Open, as well as the 2 final qualifiers for the RBC Canadian Open and CP Women's Open, as well as a couple of USGA qualifiers. So looking forward, we're really trying to have multi-year deals. We've had a lot of success recently with a couple cities and municipalities just to formulate 2 to 3 year deals that sometimes can be open or anchored in the open deals, or sometimes could be anchored in a Canadian championship. So anything from a 1-day to a 3-day, and our national championships are 5 days in total. So just looking at those, we'll look at some of the benefits later. If you've seen some of the current bids, I'll list and give you an overview of what's out there right now. Like we talked about, a lot of facilities, a lot of golf courses across the country. Kind of our hosting requirements, we can find the right fit for a specific championship. Obviously, our flagship events, our Canadian Men's and Women's Amateur Championship, need to be a little bit higher profile, challenging course to train and give a competition for our top elite amateur players. But essentially a comprehensive facility with driving range, adequate clubhouse space, practice facilities close to major centers, close to the airport. Our Canadian championships are a max field of 156 players, so a decent amount of people coming and going over a specific period of time. With the support of yourselves and destinations, we tasked our host club committees that are usually formed with our member clubs to build a support and financial commitment just to drive and raise the profile of the event. We're not trying to offset costs per se, but with our grassroots and our community legacy initiatives that we put forward with our clubs, our provincial partners, and then our host club committees, we're really trying to grow the game of golf. We're really trying to advance women's sport, girls playing golf. And kind of the next couple of years, I mentioned our strategic plan. We're really looking at providing opportunities for all golfers, and including golfers with disability, is a big focus for us right now. So in terms of the requirements, it does vary a little bit depending on the event. And if there's any interest or questions later, we can get into some of the nuances with each event specifically, or follow up after the webinar. So I think in terms of benefits, we've kind of painted a picture of the landscape of golf. And for our events, the economic impact isn't as high as our Open Championships, but obviously 156 players over 5 or 6 days. Golfers are unique in their practice habits, so they may come early to play, they might stay late. Speaking to our international audience and competitors that come play in our events, there is opportunity, and we've seen people come back to Canada and go back to where they played at one of our championships. So future tourism is definitely a benefit of hosting, engaging your community and showcasing your city. Golf is a 4 or 5 hour round, but there is a lot of downtime over the 4 or 5 days. So with our host club committees, we do work a lot with the tourism boards. We work with promoting the city, things to see and do. Inside of and outside of the golf event specifically. Our grassroots program development, all of our in schools, our golf in school programming, we're trying to connect the golf course to the school. We're trying to get more people to your member clubs. We're trying to, our FutureLinks programming to actually get people playing golf for life essentially is kind of our latest and greatest, and what we're really focusing on and promoting an active lifestyle in golf, and it has great societal benefits for that as well. So Benefits to our member clubs, working with and leading up to a championship, 2-3 years of planning at least for some of our bigger events. I think clubs really get behind it, and the amount of work that goes into getting the course and the facility prepared, I think that's a huge benefit to a lot of our member clubs. That's just a rally cry for their members and community, just to make their facilities and make their course better leading up to a big event and getting excited to host a national championship. And we spoke a bit to our media and communication. I think a lot of the efforts and our marketing communications team, that what they do with their opens is very similar to what they do with our championships as well. So in this digital age, I think the reach and the audience, we've had a lot of great conversations now that we've raised the profile and put more resources into our championships. And on the indoor side specifically, is that how do we get more eyeballs on our championship? How do we get the broadcasting? How do we get streaming? And how do we get the bigger reach with our championship? So a lot of work being done there, and you'll see our championships elevate over the next couple of years. You know, we knew coming in that there's always a lot of interest with our Open Championships, and really from a qualifier, from a Canadian Open regional qualifier to hosting a junior event, it's just a chance and a stepping stone for a lot of courses or communities to actually get that relationship with Golf Canada, start that relationship and establish your committees, get volunteers, make sure you have the infrastructure, make sure the financial support is there, and then again, building with growing the game in your community. So we've seen it as a stepping stone, and communities have done a great job in hosting, and then that's typically where we're driven to go back to year after year. Looking at, just to give an overview of the current bids that have been out in the market for a couple months, we targeted our Canadian juniors and our men's and our women's amateur to give you a scope of dates. You can all appreciate that the bulk of our Golf Canada championships are in July and August. Our women's amateur would be the third week of July, followed by the Canadian junior girls. The Canadian men's amateur is typically the first week of August, and then the Canadian junior boys is subsequently after that. So we've got 4 bids that are open. We do, with our hosting strategy, have a provincial rotation. It's a 10-year plan that looks at certain regions across the country, but we have earmarked specific championships to each province. So they have to be a member club of Golf Canada. And as you can see, Alberta, Quebec, and Ontario are the targeted provinces for these bids that are out there. The deadline for the 4 bids that are in market right now is going to be March 31st of this year. And then I could tell you future bid opportunities in the coming years. We'll send that out and circulate that similar to what we did this time, April 1st. We've got 2 in 2022 in the province of British Columbia and New Brunswick, and then 2023 we will have 3 events, 2 in Ontario, 1 in British Columbia. So let's just kind of give you an outlook of the next 3 to 5 years. That's really what we're trying to secure and lock down. And again, I think what we've had success with is getting the multi-year deals. The one-offs are great, but I think once we have something locked down with both member clubs and tourism or destinations, is just to have a good runway, start small potentially depending on the relationship, and then building up to a national championship in 22 or 23. And then in terms of the actual process and what we're looking to get back, the next steps, and if you've seen the documents kind of just on the last page, just articulates what we're looking for. If there's interest, you could reach out to us. Really what we're looking for is an overview of the revenues, the financial impact. Ideally, we would get a host hotel locked down at the same time. What would be the plan for a legacy fund initiative going back to community engagement, and then just the overall details of the course and facility. So if there's any interest, we could go forward with that. Anyone can reach out and we could get you the form to kind of fill out. And really, we're looking for a partnership with the golf course per se, a member club of Golf Canada. We want we want them to be engaged from the onset, and we want it to be really a three-party agreement, looking at our bids that are out there right now. So we didn't want to get into too much detail per event. If there's any questions on the current bids or the future outlook, we are happy to answer them.
I have a ton of questions, guys. I want to thank everyone for sending in these questions. I'm going to go through all of them. One that just came in that's pretty interesting is I wondered if either of you or both of you could speak to the relationship. You were saying that there is a three-party partnership in order to make these events work. What is the role of Golf Canada at these events once an agreement has been established? What's the preferred role that you guys would like to play, and what would the other people in the partner or groups in the partnership play in order to make sure that these events are best ever?
From an amateur perspective, essentially Golf Canada for our Canadian and qualifiers and FutureLinks events, we would take care of everything kind of quote unquote inside the ropes. The golf course and the host club committee would take care of the volunteers. They would manage the budget. They would try and secure additional funding to enhance the player experience, to enhance the profile of the event. Golf Canada would provide leadership and be involved from day one in terms of the overall direction of the event, and it would be a Golf Canada owned event. But we do put a lot on our host club committees to kind of run with a lot of the initiatives and volunteers, like I said, and just the overall logistics and operations of the event. So we would bring officials into the event. We would set up the course. We would have any say in course changes or facilities. We would oversee transportation and logistics, but essentially a lot would be put back on the host club committee for our amateur championships, at least.
All right, so the next, let me work through these questions. Lots of great questions coming in here. So the question from John is, what is the total hotel room requirements, including spectators? This is a question that was submitted around the time of the you were talking about the women's, the CP Women's Open. So could you tell us about what the hotel room requirements would be for that event?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but unfortunately I don't know the exact number for room nights for that event. We'll have to provide that afterwards through Ryan.
Okay, excellent. And another question is that because we were dealing with national and international events, so you're bringing, when we're talking about the Open, either on the women's or the men's side, is there any sort of requirements or that you guys have on those events based on existing sponsors or partners that you have that may make it easier for one destination host rather than another?
There are definitely categories with our existing partners for the Opens or our national partners for our amateur events. There's definitely categories that are exclusive to, RBC and CP, our partners of our Canadian Amateur Championships, Levelware, Cushnet, Titleist. Those are partners of our amateur championships, but there's a lot more flexibility and leeway with our amateur events for sure. And
okay.
we would work with the host club committee and the destination just on what's available at any given time, and I think in partnership to kind of secure and solicit other partners for the event.
Okay. Here's another good question. Is from Carly. Are you open to combining two facilities in order to meet the needs for practice facilities, i.e. driving ranges, or do they need to be centralized in one facility? Are those... So that would be the question from Carly on that one.
Yeah, we've had some instances where we've had some great golf courses that just don't have the practice facilities. They're landlocked. They just ran out of real estate, or they've sold off some land. So as long as there's a driving range close, logistically, Victoria Golf Course is one that comes to mind that has kind of a warm-up area. And we've used driving ranges close by. They hosted our Canadian Mid-Amateur last year, so it doesn't restrict us from going to a course if it doesn't have the blue sky of practice facilities, as long as there's something close by from an amateur's perspective.
Yeah, and we've done it with the RBC Canadian Open as well, and in using putting our practice facility at a neighboring course. And we actually haven't used the driving range. We actually turned the neighboring course, one of the fairways or two of the fairways, into the driving range.
Excellent. All right. Here's another question from Tyler. Are those forms that you spoke about in terms of the application forms only for the amateur and the junior championships, or for smaller national events like mid-ams?
It's only for the 4 championships right now. We just started that last year with the bid process, but we might be rolling out more Canadian championships. But I would just say, if anyone's interested in the other championships or junior events or qualifiers, just to reach out to me directly, and we can kind of see if there's a partnership opportunity there.
Okay. There's another question from Cassandra. The budget that is mentioned in the RFP, only Golf Canada expenses are outlined. If we reach out, can we receive full budget? And the following comment is, I am also assuming that the RFP that Golf Canada will own the budget.
We'll oversee the budget for the championship, and to her point, that's kind of what Golf Canada provides. It's kind of a baseline just so that the event actually runs, but we do kind of expect the host club to raise additional funding. So we do have, pro forma budgets on what the anticipated budget might be if, there's volunteer cost, player gifting, volunteer food and beverage, and all the rest. So I can tell you it's not that incremental from the budget that's provided in there to run a successful championship. It's somewhat minimal.
Okay. And another question from Cassandra, is there an actual application form for the men's amateur bid on top of our bid proposals?
The 2020 bid form is up now, and then 2021 will be going out shortly in April.
Okay. So I think that is it from the rest of the questions. I'm just checking to see if there's any last minute ones that are coming in, but I just want to take the time to wrap it up here. So I want to thank everyone for the participation. A great amount of you participated and asked questions. All of you will be prompted to provide some feedback at the end of the webinar. So please take the time to answer the 2 questions about the webinar, as it helps us to improve our webinar series. I want to thank our friends at Golf Canada that did an excellent job. You really hit it out of the park, sort of outlining your events and talking about the opportunities. For those of you that are looking forward to taking part in Sport Events Congress, I encourage you, if Golf Canada is there, to try and meet with them during our Sport Events Exchange, because although golf can sometimes be frustrating to master, it shouldn't be frustrating to master the bidding of events in Canada or with Golf Canada events. So thanks so much, guys, for that. Our next webinars will be announced soon, so please follow us on Twitter and our new LinkedIn page, and please stay tuned for those announcements, and we hope that you can take part in those. And if you have any ideas about the topics you would like to attend in for webinars this year, or you'd like to pursue a sponsorship for a particular webinar, please feel free to contact me. Once again, I'm Steve Trainer. Thanks very much to Brian and Adam. You did a great job, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.